Hi, my name is Scott Blinn. I'm 39 years old. I used to weigh 405 pounds. I've since lost 150 pounds or 68 kilograms. I'm married and I have one son who's 6 years old. When I was young, I was actually very thin and very athletic, always running around to the point where people wonder if I got fed enough because I was so skinny, which of course I was, but I was very active as a child. When I turned around 9 or 10, my parents got divorced and I started putting on a little bit of weight at that point. I also, when I was younger, wanted to be a supercross race star. And so I had a dirt bike and I was always practicing. And one time in a practice race, I had a pretty bad accident and fell off and I hurt my spine. I didn't report it, let my parents know about it because I didn't want to take away my dirt bike or kind of ruin my chances at a superstar career in racing. But that also contributed, that injury, which probably should have been looked at and treated, wasn't. And that contributed to some weight as well. And so I started to put on more and more weight. And I kind of shifted towards computers at that time, and spent a lot of time indoors, and ended up basically having a career as a video game developer, making video games. But doing so, you're sitting almost all day long, eating bad food, working overtime, that kind of stuff. So I ended up getting up to 405 pounds. I had also a lot of medical issues because of it. I ended up getting type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure. I started taking 4 medications a day for that. Because of my diabetes, I had to get frequent testing. I had to go to a heart test, and my heart actually stopped for over a minute because I was so heavy I couldn't use the treadmill. So they injected me with a drug, which ended up killing me briefly. And I came to. I've also had a couple spinal surgeries because of the original accident, and in the weight as well. Continued to degenerate my back and my discs. So I was getting in a really bad place. Just a lot of medical issues, and I had a family, starting up a family, and I had this career, but I was always tired, always in pain, on all these medications for a day. And so I started, really looking at, where I was and where I wanted to go. And, like anybody else, I tried dieting, and things like that. And, exercising, it's something you start and, stop. And as we all know, dieting, just doesn't work. And, I was looking for something else. The turning point for me really was the day after my son was born. So on that day, we're in the hospital and I'm holding my son, and my back started hurting again, and it was a pain I was familiar with from one surgery already. So I was holding him, I had to give him to my wife, and then next thing I knew I was laying down flat in excruciating pain. And I couldn't walk, I was in intense pain, and I was there for 7 days. And with nothing to do but be in pain and just think. Knowing that my weight was definitely a big contributing factor to me being there. Meanwhile, my newborn son was going home with my wife and I was stuck in the hospital. I ended up actually being bedridden for about 3 months straight in intense pain, lots of medications, and just had a lot of time to reflect in what was important for me in my life. And I said, well, this is a very hard problem. One I haven't been able to solve, so what could I do to solve that? And that's kind of what started me researching, finding out exactly what's all the factors involved here. And so that kind of started my journey. I came across the Gabriel Method in kind of the first phase, as I like to call it, in my transformation, which was education. I wanted to, fully understand, about weight gain, why diets didn't work. I got his book right away and started reading it. And I fell in love with the book. And to this day, I still tell people, it's one of the first things I tell them when they're like, wow, you've lost this weight, or how'd you do it? It's part of my core tool set for people, and it really works. As he talked, he explained and showed critical research and things. It really impressed me about his book, that he went through the trouble and cited the science behind all this as well. And that really helped me understand the big picture, and kind of really got me started on nutrition and health in my body and wellness and happiness and all those components. Now when I crave something, it's usually a healthy choice just naturally. It's not something I have to fight or work with or against. It's kind of what I want. That was a big part for me. And then gradually, because I started feeling better, the weight started coming off just through that and in the Gabriel Method. I started to add in things like exercise. I had a mountain bike for years. I maybe ridden it an hour total in many years, and I find myself coming home from work and hopping on my bike with my son and his bike and running around the driveway. I just wanted to. I had all this energy and I wanted to use it. So it kind of became a positive snowballing effect, where starting on just focusing and visualization, and then bringing in the nutrition and the healthy eating and a plant-strong diet, just started to turn into, okay, now I want to exercise. Now I want to do more, and then that snowballed even further into seeking out activities that I avoided before. Friends were going river rafting or something, and I was on board. But before I'm like, I'm going to stay home. I would start to actually go out and do a lot of activities with friends I hadn't done before. which was great, because you meet new friends, you try new things, and so it's kind of just been a positive experience all around that just keeps, growing and growing into more and more, positive experiences. And you have this young son who's full of energy, and you want to be able to experience life with him and do more. Through the weight loss and the Gabriel Method, I've been able to do a lot more with him. And so, we'll go outside and run and ride bikes and a lot of physical stuff, which he's really into. He's into football, so, not only be able to just go and, the football games with him, but after, throw a football around with him and practice and that kind of stuff. So just the physical aspects alone, I think has been very good. And also want to be a good role model for him as well and, keep him healthy and happy. And so, you kind of, what better way than to do that yourself? So that's always, probably been, my biggest motivator is for my son. Since my transformation, I no longer take any medication for type 2 diabetes. It's a complete remission or cured, whatever they call it. But my back feels great. I can lift heavy things, no problem, and so I feel like a different person. It's something I think you always visualize, especially if you're very, very heavy. Like, man, what if I just woke up and I was in a healthy body, right? Like, what would that feel like? Something you crave that and want to know what it's like, and to then all of a sudden start to go down that road and be there. Of course, it is a transformation. It's not like you just wake up and you're thin and fit every day, and it's what I'm still going through. But it's an assured thing now. It's just who I am, part of my life. And I think through visualization and other parts, you've kind of really set that home for me. It's solidified, and I'm very excited about where I'm going and to continue to get healthy. I think there's a lot of reasons why people try to lose weight and try to get healthy. But just remember to do it for you. I think it's important to really get a good understanding of nutrition yourself and do the research, which is exactly how I found the Gabriel Method to begin with. The last piece of advice I think I give everybody is, nobody's perfect. I definitely am not, and still am not. And people think, wow, you lost all that weight, you must have executed everything perfectly. And of course, that's not true. We all have our days, we all have our moments, and I think it's important that you focus on winning the war and forget about a battle that's lost. It's really important that you just keep going and don't beat yourself up over it. Don't even think about it. Just keep moving forward, think forward, visualize where you want to be, and you'll get there.